Windows Vista is an operating system by Microsoft for use on personal computers, including home and business desktops, laptops, tablet PCs and media center PCs. Development was completed on 8 November 2006, and over the following 3 months, it was released in stages to computer hardware and software manufacturers, business customers and retail channels. On 30 January 2007, it was released worldwide and was made available for purchase and download from Microsoft's website. The release of Windows Vista came more than 5 years after the introduction of its predecessor, Windows XP, the longest time span between successive releases of Microsoft Windows desktop operating systems. It was succeeded by Windows 7, which was released to manufacturing on the 22nd of July 2009 and released worldwide for retail on the 22nd of October 2009. New features of Windows Vista include an updated graphical user interface and visual style dubbed Aero, a new search component called Windows Search, redesigned networking, audio, print and display subsystems, and new multimedia tools including Windows DVD Maker. Vista aimed to increase the level of communication between machines on a home network, using peer-to-peer technology to simplify sharing files and media between computers and devices. Windows Vista included version 3.0 of the .NET framework, allowing software developers to write applications without traditional Windows APIs. Microsoft's primary stated objective with Windows Vista was to improve the state of security in the Windows operating system. One common criticism of Windows XP and its predecessors was their commonly exploited security vulnerabilities and overall susceptibility to malware, viruses and buffer overflows. In light of this, Microsoft Chairman Bill Gates announced in early 2002 a company-wide, trustworthy computing initiative, which aimed to incorporate security into every aspect of software development at the company. Microsoft stated that it prioritized improving the security of Windows XP and Windows Server 2003 above finishing Windows Vista, thus delaying its completion. While these new features and security improvements have garnered positive reviews, Vista has also been the target of much criticism and negative press. Criticism of Windows Vista has targeted its high system requirements, its more restrictive licensing terms, the inclusion of a number of new DRM technologies aimed at restricting the copying of protected digital media, lack of compatibility with some pre-Vista hardware and software, longer boot time, and the number of authorization prompts for user account control. As a result of these and other issues, Windows Vista had seen initial adoption and satisfaction rates lower than Windows XP. However, with an estimated 330 million Internet users as of January 2009, it had been announced that Vista usage had surpassed Microsoft's pre-launch 2-year-out expectations of achieving 200 million users. At the release of Windows 7, Windows Vista was the second most widely used operating system on the Internet with an approximately 19% market share, the most widely used being Windows XP with an approximately 63% market share. In May 2010, Windows Vista's market share had an estimated range from 15% to 26%. On the 22nd of October 2010, Microsoft ceased sales of retail copies of Windows Vista, and the OEM sales for Vista ceased a year later. As of November 2015, update, Vista market share was 1.61%. Extended support for Windows Vista ends on April 11, 2017. They stopped providing mainstream support on the 10th of April 2012. Development of Windows Vista. As Longhorn, Microsoft began work on Windows Vista, known at the time by its codename Longhorn, in May 2001. 5 months before the release of Windows XP. It was originally expected to ship sometime late in 2003 as a minor step between Windows XP and Blackcomb, which was planned to be the company's next major operating system release. Gradually, Longhorn assimilated many of the important new features and technologies slated for Blackcomb, resulting in the release date being pushed back several times 3 years. In some builds of Longhorn, their license agreement said, for the Microsoft product codenamed Whistler. Many of Microsoft's developers were also retasked to build updates to Windows XP and Windows Server 2003 to strengthen security. Faced with ongoing delays and concerns about feature creep, Microsoft announced on the 27th of August 2004 that it had revised its plans. For this reason, Longhorn was reset to start work on componentizing the Windows Server 2003 Service Pack 1 codebase, and over time reincorporating the features that would be intended for an actual operating system release. However, some previously announced features such as WinF were dropped or postponed, and a new software development methodology called the Security Development Lifecycle was incorporated in an effort to address concerns with the security of the Windows codebase, which is programmed in C, C++, and assembly. Longhorn became known as Vista in 2005. The early development stages of Longhorn were generally characterized by incremental improvements and updates to Windows XP. During this period, Microsoft was fairly quiet about what was being worked on, as their marketing and public relations focus was more strongly focused on Windows XP and Windows Server 2003, which was released in April 2003. Occasional builds of Longhorn were leaked onto popular file-sharing networks such as IRC, BitTorrent, Edonkey and various news groups. And so most of what is known about builds prior to the first sanctioned development release of Longhorn in May 2003 is derived from these builds. After several months of relatively little news or activity from Microsoft with Longhorn, Microsoft released Build 4008, which had made an appearance on the Internet around the 28th of February 2003. It was also privately handed out to a select group of software developers as an evolutionary release over Build 3683. It contained a number of small improvements, including a modified Blue Plex theme and a new, simplified Windows image-based installer that operates in graphical mode from the outset, and completed an install of the operating system in approximately one-third the time of Windows XP on the same hardware. An optional, new taskbar was introduced that was thinner than the previous build and displayed the time differently. The most notable visual and functional difference, however, came with Windows Explorer. The incorporation of the Plex theme made blue the dominant color of the entire application. The Windows XP-style task pane was almost completely replaced with a large horizontal pane that appeared under the toolbars. A new search interface allowed for filtering of results, searching of Windows help, and natural language queries that would be used to integrate with WinF. The animated search characters were also removed. The view modes were also replaced with a single slider that would resize the icons in real time, in list, thumbnail, or details mode, depending on where the slider was. File metadata was also made more visible and more easily editable, with more active encouragement to fill out missing pieces of information. Also of note was the conversion of Windows Explorer to being a .NET application. Most builds of Longhorn and Vista were identified by a label that was always displayed in the bottom right corner of the desktop. A typical build label would look like Longhorn Build 3663, Labo 6_N, 0207281728. Higher build numbers did not automatically mean that the latest features from every development team at Microsoft was included. Typically, a team working on a certain feature or subsystem would generate their own working builds which developers would test with, and when the code was deemed stable, all the changes would be incorporated back into the main development tree at once. At Microsoft, a number of build labs exist where the compilation of the entirety of Windows can be performed by a team. The name of the lab in which any given build originated is shown as part of the build label, and the date and time of the build follows that. Some builds only display the build label in the version information dialog. The icons used in these builds are from Windows XP. At the Windows Hardware Engineering Conference in May 2003, Microsoft gave their first public demonstrations of the new desktop window manager and Aero. The demonstrations were done on a revised build 4015 which was never released. A number of sessions for developers and hardware engineers at the conference focused on these new features, as well as the next-generation secure computing base, which at the time was Microsoft's proposed solution for creating a secure computing environment whereby any given component of the system could be deemed trusted. Also at this conference, Microsoft reiterated their roadmap for delivering Longhorn, pointing to an early 2005 release date. Development reset by 2004. It had become obvious to the Windows team at Microsoft that they were losing sight of what needed to be done to complete the next version of Windows and ship it to customers. Internally, some Microsoft employees were describing the Longhorn project as another Cairo or Cairo.net, referring to the Cairo development project that the company embarked on through the first half of the 1990s, which never resulted in a shipping operating system. Microsoft was shocked in 2005 by Apple's release of Mac OS X Tiger. It offered only a limited subset of features planned for Longhorn, in particular fast file searching and integrated graphics and sound processing, but appeared to have impressive reliability and performance compared to contemporary Longhorn builds. Most Longhorn builds had major Explorer.x system leaks which prevented the OS from performing well, and added more confusion to the development teams in later builds, with more and more code being developed which failed to reach stability. In a 23 September 2005 front-page article on the Wall Street Journal, Microsoft co-president Jim Allchin, who had overall responsibility for the development and delivery of Windows, explained how development of Longhorn had been crashing into the ground, due in large part to the haphazard methods by which features were introduced and integrated into the core of the operating system, without a clear focus on an end product. Allchin went on to explain how in December 2003, he enlisted the help of two other senior executives, Brian Valentine and Amitabh Srivastava, the former being experienced with shipping software at Microsoft, most notably Windows Server 2003, and the latter having spent his career at Microsoft researching and developing methods of producing high-quality testing systems. Srivastava employed a team of core architects to visually map out the entirety of the Windows operating system, and to proactively work towards a development process that would enforce high levels of code quality, reduce interdependencies between components, and in general, not make things worse with Vista. Since Microsoft decided that Longhorn needed to be further componentized, work started on the Omega 13 series builds where they would componentize existing Windows Server 2003 source code, and over time add back functionality as development progressed. Future Longhorn builds would start from Windows Server 2003 Service Pack 1 and continue from there. This change, announced internally to Microsoft employees on 26 August 2004, began in earnest in September, though it would take several more months before the new development process and build methodology would be used by all of the development teams. A number of complaints came from individual developers, and Bill Gates himself. that the new development process was going to be prohibitively difficult to work within. As Windows Vista by the beginning of July 2005, the company had considered several names for the final release, ranging from simple to fanciful and inventive. In the end, Microsoft chose Windows Vista as confirmed on the 22nd of July 2005, believing it to be a wonderful intersection of what the product really does, what Windows stands for, and what resonates with customers and the needs. Group project manager Greg Sullivan told Paul Thurrott, "You want a PC to adapt to you and help you cut through the clutter to focus on what's important to you. That's what Windows Vista is all about. Bringing clarity to your world, so you can focus on what matters to you." Microsoft co-president Jim Allchin also loved the name, saying that Vista creates the right imagery for the new product capabilities and inspires the imagination with all the possibilities of what can be done with Windows, making people's passions come alive. After Longhorn was named Windows Vista in July 2005, an unprecedented beta test program was started, involving hundreds of thousands of volunteers and companies. In September of that year, Microsoft started releasing regular community technology previews to beta testers from July 2005 to February 2006. The first of these was distributed at the 2005 Microsoft Professional Developers Conference, and was subsequently released to beta testers and Microsoft Developer Network subscribers. The builds that followed incorporated most of the planned features for the final product, as well as a number of changes to the user interface, based largely on feedback from beta testers. Windows Vista was deemed feature complete with the release of the February CTP, released on the 22nd of February 2006. And much of the remainder of the work between that build and the final release of the product focused on stability, performance, application and driver compatibility, and documentation. Beta 2, released in late May, was the first build to be made available to the general public through Microsoft's customer preview program. It was downloaded by over 5 million people. 2 release candidates followed in September and October, both of which were made available to a large number of users. At the Intel Developer Forum on the 9th of March 2006, Microsoft announced a change in the plans to support TFI and Windows Vista. The UEFI 2.0 specification was not completed until early 2006, and at the time of Microsoft's announcement, no firmware manufacturers had completed a production implementation which could be used for testing. As a result, the decision was made to postpone the introduction of UEFI support to Windows. Support for UEFI on 64-bit platforms was postponed until Vista Service Pack 1 and Windows Server 2008 and 32-bit UEFI would not be supported, as Microsoft does not expect many such systems to be built as the market moves to 64-bit processors. While Microsoft had originally hoped to have the consumer versions of the operating system available worldwide in time for Christmas 2006, it announced in March 2006 that the release date would be pushed back to January 2007 in order to give the company, and the hardware and software companies that Microsoft depends on for providing device drivers, additional time to prepare. Because a released and manufacturing build is the final version of code shipped to retailers and other distributors. The purpose of a pre-RTM build is to eliminate any last showstopper bugs that may prevent the code from responsibly being shipped to customers, as well as anything else that consumers may find annoying. Thus, it is unlikely that any major new features would be introduced. Instead, work would focus on Vista's fit and finish. In just a few days, developers had managed to drop Vista's bug count from over 2,470 on the 22nd of September to just over 1,400 by the time RC2 shipped in early October. However, they still had a way to go before Vista was ready to RTM. Microsoft's internal processes required Vista's bug count to drop to 500 or fewer before the product could go into escrow for RTM. For most of the pre-RTM builds, those 32-bit editions are only released. On 14 June 2006, Windows developer Philip Su posted a blog entry which decried the development process of Windows Vista, stating that the code is way too complicated, and that the pace of coding has been tremendously slowed down by overbearing process. The same post also described Windows Vista as having approximately 50 million lines of code, with about 2,000 developers working on the product. During a demonstration of the speech recognition feature new to Windows Vista at Microsoft's financial analyst meeting on 27 July 2006, the software recognized the phrase "Dear Mom" as "Dear Aunt." After several failed attempts to correct the error, the sentence eventually became, "Dear Aunt, let's set so double the killer delete select all." A developer with Vista's speech recognition team later explained that there was a bug with the builder Vista that was causing the microphone gain level to be set very high, resulting in the audio being received by the speech recognition software being incredibly distorted. Windows Vista Build 5824 was supposed to be the RTM release, but a bug, which destroyed any system that was upgraded from Windows XP, prevented this, damaging development and lowering the chance that it would hit its January 2007 deadline. Development of Windows Vista came to an end when Microsoft announced that it had been finalized on 8 November 2006. And was concluded by co-president of Windows Development, Jim Walchin. The RTM's build number had also jumped to 6,000 to reflect Vista's internal version number, NT 6.0. Jumping RTM build numbers is common practice among consumer-oriented Windows versions, like Windows 98, Windows 98 SE, Windows ME or Windows XP, as compared to the business-oriented versions like Windows 2000 or Server 2003. On 16 November 2006, Microsoft made the final build available to MSDN and TechNet Plus subscribers. A business-oriented Enterprise Edition was made available to volume license customers on 30 November. Windows Vista was launched for general customer availability on 30 January 2007.